Okay, so we'll take some strategic breaks like during the process, and then we'll try to answer the questions. Our goal is to try to address like as many questions as possible. If you have joined our webinars before, we usually try to keep like the decks a little longer, but this time we want to keep the decks more crisp. So like the decks, this specific deck is short, and but the reason for that is because like we want to take like as many questions as possible from you all, and just go through those questions as well. First of all, again, as I said, like thanks, Hendrik, for being here and try to address like the questions like we've been getting like from our clients and also like other EB1A aspirants. So the whole deck is divided into two parts. One part is like we're gonna cover about like EB1A at a overall and why actually EB1A matters, and we'll talk about like the partnership between Boundless and EB1A Experts, and we'll also talk about like where Hendrik will talk about like why the legalities and the legal structure and the petition is really really important like in the whole process of EB1A as well. Without any further ado, let's actually get started. First of all, like one important thing is like why EB1A Green Card matters. Probably, like as you know, that like in EB2 and EB3, especially for like Indian born, like what is this, Indian born citizens, EB2 and EB3, the final action date is like 2012 and 2013. So which means that like unless you have a priority date before 2012 or 2013, you cannot apply for green card. Whereas in EB1A, the correct final action date for Indian born citizens is February 2022. So it means that if you have a priority date and you're qualified for EB1A, which means that your I-140 is approved, you can apply for green card, not only for you, and you can also apply for your family as well. So that's the most important benefit. That's the most important advantage of like EB1A. Now, let's talk about like the burnout about like the visa renewals. Like what I have been on H1B visa for a really long time before I got my EB1A. Whenever I'm on H1B, it used to take like a really long time for me to go and get a visa slot. It used to take at least like 3 months to look for the visa slots. And when I go, I have to travel to a different city altogether and get my visa renewed. And it's always like, what is it, during the immigration? At any point, like I have to go stand in a long line and get the and answer like what is it, many questions and come into the country. So with EB1A, like what is it, this process is more simpler. Of course, like you don't have to get any stamp or any visa renewals. Of course, like green card as such has a 10-year renewal period, but before that, you can actually get the citizenship as well. The other one is like you've already done the hard work. So one most important thing, actually, before we talk about like the hard work, I would like to actually add a couple of points. How do you qualify for EB1A? So there are two buckets for EB1A. One is like a criteria bucket. The other one is like the final merits bucket. And the important goal is like you need to meet the criteria bucket, like which means that like you need to meet at least 3 out of like 10 criteria. And then final merits is which Hendrik will talk a little bit like more in detail later, which is like a 2 to 3 page write-up, which shows that like how you are on the top of the field. Now, let's talk about like what I say you have why you have done all the hard work. When you have like more than 10 years or more than like 12 years of experience, you have done a lot of impactful work throughout your career. And in my experience, like what I've seen is like everyone, and this critical experience or this impactful experience does meet a few criteria. And from there on, like you are actually EB1A or meeting the criteria or like what's getting the final maths right is only like 6 months or 8 months away from where you are right now. So it means that like you have done all the hard work and then like EB1A is like not too far from here. And I know I see like what is a few more participants joined right now. The feel free to add like the questions and then we'll go through the questions like at the end or probably like in between as well. Now, time sensitive roles. Like what is it? Well,
Sorry to interrupt. Someone messaged saying that they are not able to see the screen. So could you,
ah,
stop and share it again?
okay,
Thank you
sounds
so much.
How about now?
Yeah, we are able to see.
The screen. Can anyone add like what is it, the question in the Q&A, whether you're able to see my screen or not?
Yeah, I am just putting in the chat.
Yep. Yeah. Thanks, Tejaswini. Okay, cool. Now, time sensitive roles. The most important thing, like when I was at my H-1B visa, that like I was not able to apply for like every role what I see, and to be honest, like there were like a few interviews I couldn't go through because like I was on H-1B, and it usually takes, or and probably like that specific role was not sponsoring like any visa. So it's a very important to have a green card for like to easily move across the jobs, and also like probably even get the time sensitive roles as well. Now let's try to understand like what exactly EB1A is really. We would divide this into like two important parts. Like one is a strategy and mindset, and the legal structure. When we talk to like clients or like potential clients, one of the common questions which you usually get, like EB1 does require like a lot of evidences. And the I would say like it's yes and no. EB1A does require evidences because like you need to meet the criteria, you need to present your case like really well. But it's rather than just the evidences, it's about like painting a very strong story, connecting different things, connecting most important evidences, and then telling a very compelling story is really important. And it's always like not about like the volume, it's about like the impact of the work what you have done. Impact, like what is it? At a high level, EB1A is nothing but like how your work has impacted the field. So showing the relevant impact to the field is adds a lot more value and than just like what's the volumes of evidences. The other most important thing, your positioning defines the outcome. The positioning, what we call is like your field of expertise. So once you have a good field of expertise, and then how do you align different evidences towards your field of experience is like field of expertise is like more important than like what is it, just making sure like the evidences are like completely scattered around. Now let's quickly talk about the legal structure. So we at EB1 Experts, we always believe attorneys like play a very important role, or like the most important role in order to actually have a very strong EB1A petition. The reason why we feel that is like what attorneys usually are able to understand like the best important strategy from the work, and based on the strategy, they're able to put together a really great petition. And every element like the letters, timeline, criteria, and supporting nature are really important. There's always like that boundary. You cannot add like too much evidence, or you cannot add too less evidence. The storytelling is really important, and that's like what is a very important in the whole legal structure as well. And keeping the whole structure, whole petition consistent is a really important thought process here. But with that, like I would say, actually, I'll hand it over to you, Hendrik.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. And thanks for everybody for joining today. I'm excited to be here. Yeah, I maybe just want to double back just on a couple of things and add to what Raghu, you also mentioned. I do think one other piece about the EB1A, which is also just very attractive, is it also allows for the self-sponsorship element, right? So not only is it a much faster process for folks, but folks can actually take charge of their green card destiny beyond what an employer might be sponsoring under EB2 or EB3, and we can leverage any existing EB2 or EB3 I-140 priority date. So typically, a lot of folks are close or already able to proceed with not only the initial EB1A I-140, but also the green card application, the adjustment of status. So that's just an additional comment. Totally agree with everything that you said, Raghu. That's just the other piece that I think is also worth calling out. I do also think it's useful to know for these cases and why kind of the combination of getting the right evidence and the legal expertise is so important, is just to step back for a second and just recognize that all these advantages exist under the EB1A because the intention for the EB1A is really to reward folks that have all this incredible expertise and work experience to be able to contribute into the US. I will say that a lot of people, and why I think the EB1A expert service is such a great thing, is because a lot of people do already have this level of experience. It's a matter of how do you prove that in a way that an officer wants to see this under the EB1A regulations. And so there's a lot of people that kind of self-select out of this because maybe they either think that they're not quite qualified, or taking that step on like where do you go from there? Even if you speak to an attorney and they say, you likely are qualified, oftentimes a law firm is not there to really help you build out this profile and get the kind of evidence you want. So just wanted to throw a couple of those things out. I think kind of the legal structure, yeah, Raghu's absolutely right. The there needs to be a real alignment between the first of all, like, what is your specific expertise, and then what evidence is available to gather, and what is the strongest evidence that you can gather based on your profile, and then having that also flow through the narrative and how it's presented in the actual legal brief and legal filing. So I may be getting way ahead of myself here and jumping forward in the application, but I just want to throw some of that in there because it's we're very excited about this partnership. Yep.
Exactly, Hendrik. I want to have like one personal question. What I have, like we have many criteria for EB1A. What do you think like is the most important criterion for like a tech professional?
Yeah, I mean, technically, you need to satisfy at least 3 of the given criteria. I think in reality, what feedback from our legal team, that's just we have a group of folks just handling these cases, and from cases I've done in past roles, I think lead and critical role is to me kind of foundational for the case. So if folks think about companies that they've have worked at, currently work at, projects that they've been involved in, and trying to show that they have had some either lead or critical role, it doesn't have to be both, and then focusing on the kind of the objective impact. That's like the big piece of that. But I think lead or critical role is really important in these cases. It kind of sets the stage for the case. It gives the officer who's adjudicating the case insight really into what folks are doing and really the contributions they're making. And then that can be leveraged in a lot of different ways, whether it's original contribution, a criteria as well. But I would say for me, and in my experience, lead or critical role is really kind of fundamental. And that's typically folks mid-senior career. I mean, even some earlier folks, they have that. It's just a matter of how to develop that and explain it to an officer.
Exactly. And one other common thing, like what I say, Hendrik, is like someone who has like that 10 to 15 years of experience. And as you mentioned, they have been like working on like really important projects like throughout their career. And it's very important like to show the impact really well in those projects to articulate for the critical role. Yeah, thanks for that, Hendrik.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And that's a little bit of a strategic decision as well, right? What to focus on. And then, yes, trying to have as objective a measurement, which can take a little, a little thinking through, is required to satisfy those criteria. Yes.
Exactly. Let's talk about like Boundless for a bit, and also like let's talk about like the partnership between Boundless and like EB1A Experts. I mean, right, we have been, we recently put together like the partnership like on the website, but technically like Boundless and EB1A Experts, like I've been working like for almost like 1.5 to 2 years. So my take on, again, just I'll add like my thought process here, Hendrik, where you can actually add like more points to it as well. In my view, like Boundless, like attorneys, like have more than, I mean, here, like it's put together 100,000 like visa holders, but especially for EB1A as well, if I remember right, like what is it? There's more than 1,000 approvals put together like across like all the attorneys as well. And Hendrik, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, no, you're right. We've helped a lot of people. We do a corporate immigration, family immigration, and then we do have a dedicated team of folks for these self-sponsored EB1A applications, and we're lucky enough to have a good volume, of cases every month. So we really leverage that for kind of insights into what's happening and as real time as possible, kind of see the trends, especially at times like this when there are changes in the immigration environment.
Okay, exactly, Hendrik. Do you want to talk about the attorney-led expert-driven?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think maybe just as maybe a little bit of a more of a background about Boundless. So at Boundless, and this is partially what aligns so well with EB1A expert folks, is just we're very passionate about trying to simplify the immigration process, make immigration easier overall for folks to understand and just get information about what might be possible. And like in the EB1A context, again, a lot of people either are unaware of the option or they just don't think that they are close to being qualified for it. So it's kind of helping to provide that type of background and information to folks. Our Boundless website is one of the most viewed immigration websites for U.S. immigration in the world. So we managed to help a lot of people that way. And then beyond providing information to people, we're very focused on blending the legal expertise that we have available through the Boundless Legal Services team and our technology. So it's kind of a mixture of informing people, having that legal expertise, and then giving people clarity also throughout the process, which is often a challenge in the legal space. So having people have access to a modern workflow where they can see the different tasks and see where their case is at all times. So we're kind of very big on blending those together. And yes, on the self-sponsored EB1A side, we help a lot of folks. Typically, folks may already have an EB2, EB3, I-140 with an existing employer. They are tired of waiting so long and want to secure a green card as soon as possible. And they have, their mid-career, senior level folks who have worked on some great projects, as you referenced earlier, Raghu. And so it's those folks in the technology sector, AI, product, folks involved in startups, also folks, on the academic side. So that's kind of the common case that we help with, and that we've helped folks in many industries. But that's where most of our volume is. Again, we're lucky enough to have a high volume monthly, so that allows us to get that accurate feedback, be able to adjust to any changes in adjudication standards and trends on a case-by-case basis. And we obviously analyze each individual's background as an individual, because although there's kind of buckets of a tech or AI or product leadership as an example, every person has different experience. So we have kind of that assessment capability, the strategic capability, and then experience presenting all of your evidence and your background to the officer.
Exactly, Hendrik. Thanks for going more in detail here. And now, I want to hear your thoughts, like why this partnership between EB1A Experts and Boundless matters, and what exactly we're going to do through this strategic partnership.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we touched on it briefly. I think what's fantastic about this is, oftentimes either, first of all, folks are not aware of the opportunity or don't think it applies to them. So, together, both of our organizations are informing people about the opportunity. First of all, just that it exists and that it is not as impossible as people seem to think. So we together we help people avoid just saying this is really not for me, and either it's EB2 or EB3 or it's a lot of money into an EB5, right? So it's making folks aware that this opportunity exists, first of all. And I think that really matters, is giving people just an understanding of the opportunities and how to leverage all the hard work people have put into their careers. I think the other really pivotal piece to this, as I referenced before, is that typically, without the EB1A expert team, typically folks may go to an attorney and say, I want some information. I did hear about this EB1A. And I just kind of want like an assessment. And then an attorney, will take a look at it and say, yeah, like you've done a lot of great work. But you don't have any evidence yet, right? So you have the background, but you are not at a point where you can file because you don't have this in an evidentiary format that the officer wants to satisfy the particular criteria and kind of the legal standards. So, come back to me. So maybe give a few tips like, yeah, go ahead and try to do some judging, try to publish something. Come back to me when you have evidence, right? That happens often. And so then the individual is excited because they likely do have EB1A, which is going to save years and years for most folks on the green card process. And there are attorneys available to help. But what do those folks do? And so I think having the EB1A expert team available to help guide people into where they really should focus and spend time, and then you're helping them through that and helping them kind of gather this kind of proven type of evidence. To me, that is, I think that's wonderful that exists, because it's a lot of people are kind of left not knowing where to go. So I think it's, again, the education piece. I think it's actually helping people bridge that gap on how to go from an assessment to an actual case filing. And then, we love doing these cases. We love helping folks through this process. And again, we're able to leverage kind of the, pretty much as close to real-time feedback on adjudication trends and what's happening in the field, and experience in preparing legal briefs, and helping take that narrative and evidence and package it for an officer in a way that they want to see these things, and knowing, how to present things and what terminology to use. It's just a very exciting partnership. So hopefully that answers the question. But overall, yeah, we're just extremely excited about the fact that you all are doing this work and helping so many people.
Exactly, Hendrik. Definitely, Hendrik. One of the points which I would like to also add is like the whole partnership. We get to like provide the evidences. We get to talk about the different profiles. We get to talk about like what exactly happening in case of an RFE. We also get to talk about, like, as you mentioned, the change in the landscape, and think about like what exactly, and anticipate like what could happen 6 months from now and 1 year from now, and make sure like add those feedback right into the like the whole profile building strategy. And it's more of like, when you're working on your petition, like, or when you're working on your profile, it's like one person, where like here it's a knowledge of like a collective community, like expert attorney community, and an expert like client community as well. So we try to use all that knowledge to make the profile like much stronger. And
Absolutely.
makes sense. So again, I think like these are all the things, like what can you expect is something which we actually covered right now. What I want to do, Hendrik, right now, as promised, like it's 30 minutes in, we covered like most of the topic, but it seems like we already have like more than 100 questions waiting for us to answer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop share. I'm going to give it back to Shweta and Yamini. Let's go through the questions.
Yeah, sure. I think, we'll go with this. So I have approved I-140 in EB2. Can we self-file I-140 in EB1A? And can I have 2 I-140s, one EB2 and one in EB1 until my priority date's current?
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. I will give just one quick caveat that we're happy to answer questions for informational purposes, and would be happy to obviously help folks in kind of an actual legal advising capacity. But just kind of at a high level, yes. So a lot of folks, like typically most folks that we get to work with, they already have an approved I-140 or multiple from past or current employers, EB2, EB3, and then want to, again, expedite this green card process and backlog. And so leverage the old I-140 as a priority date. and then have a new EB1A related I-140 application. So that's totally fine. You can have various I-140 applications, and so that's very common.
Sense. I have one question, Hendrik. One of the common questions what I see is like with the new administration. The new administration has been in like for 5 months right now. What can we, I mean, I know we are already seeing like some cases, what's happening. Moving forward, like what can you expect? And also the other question, what I commonly see is what changes, like what exactly the focus has to be on the profile to make sure like what to say, you get a perfect, you get an approval for sure.
Yeah, so I wish we had the magic formula for approval for sure. We do, we have a good track record, but I think I think so in terms of kind of the changes in administration. So we've obviously seen this change of administration before in the past, right? So looking back to that and seeing what's currently happening, really an increased rate of requests for evidence, right? Is kind of what was expected, what we are seeing, and I would say that it's still early on, right, in the second term, but simply having an increase in the requests for evidence, it's a little painful. It causes delays, but the real issue is, does that lead to denials, right? So so far it's been a increase in requests for evidence. Now, a common question is kind of what are these RFEs about? Like there's got to be just like one thing the officers are asking over and over. Not necessarily. So as there's an increase in RFEs, just all of a sudden, sometimes, a lot of times there's also kind of like boilerplate standard RFEs that get sent out and language that we see across hundreds of RFEs, right? Very similar language. So, it's sometimes with just the increase in RFEs, which is happening and probably will continue to go up is kind of our prediction. Some of it is just boilerplate saying, provide me more evidence. We also have to remember to add here that almost everybody wants premium processing a service, right? So it's an additional government filing fee, and they're supposed to provide us feedback within 15 days, which they typically adhere to. So that's another topic, but they have 15 days to look at these cases. These are very big cases as well. And their workflows, I'm sure, their workloads are probably pretty high, especially with a lot of things changing. And so there's kind of a combination probably of let's push back on these cases a little bit more, which increases the RFEs. These RFEs aren't necessarily all that challenging, I would say. But there certainly are some RFEs, and actually the more useful ones, I guess I would say, are the ones that are very pointed and ask about very specific items. Now, I'll just take one more minute. I realize I'm going a little long here. But a lot of times what we see are questions about for more background information about a particular project or a particular organization where somebody might have an award or a membership or have published something. So a lot of times they're asking for more background information to support the kind of the level or the standard of these different outlets or achievements. So that's kind of what we're seeing now. And again, expectation is probably continued increased rates of requests for evidence. As we get the feedback and requests for evidence, we obviously try to implement that and see like how evidence might need to change, what different arguments need to be made. But yeah, let me know, Raghu, if I answered the question that you had there.
No, you did, Hendrik. Just adding a little bit, like a few data points, as you mentioned, like there is an increase in the RFE cases. We're actually able to like crunch some numbers. We see around like 30% of the cases which are going to RFEs right now. Before December, the number was like more closer to like 15%, somewhere between 15 and 20%. So definitely there have been increase in the RFE rate. But however, like you did touch upon the right point, like how about the approval rate? Approval rate consistently has been similar to what it was like before December right now. Although like there are a few RFE cases we need to respond to. So then we would know like the actual approval rate. The one other question what I have here, Hendrik, is like I see like Boundless like attorneys have been adding more evidences since January, anticipating like there could be more RFEs. Will add will add more evidence to make sure like what is it, the case is like more detailed, and which is something which we have seen. But apart from that, like do you think like what's with the attorneys are doing anything special to handle like these RFE cases?
You're right that kind of in anticipation of the change, and again expecting more RFEs, we're obviously always trying to be in front of that, and trying to keep those RFE rates as low as possible. So yeah, so adding more background evidence, supporting any evidence that's already provided, right, and providing kind of more detail about particular organizations or achievements. That's one thing. I think it really is. I think one thing that the Boundless Legal Services team does really well is that because of the volume, and we have a dedicated team just doing this, there's constant communication internally about things that are being brought up in RFEs, and if there's any common trends, whether it's even just some criteria over time that change, like how attractive they are to officers, whether it's maybe the compensation criteria being challenged a little bit more than it should be, or we typically see, or like kind of understanding that typically this type of judging that's done is or type of a publication, certain journals, or like judging is one, for example, that typically we have some success there, and so like really trying to make sure that if we are going to go for the compensation one, because they're not very clear on what level the compensation needs to be, how do we adjust kind of what percentage of the level 4 Department of Labor wage, for example, somebody needs to be at, and how many eggs do we put in that basket, right? Versus knowing that judging is we're probably going to have success. So I guess to answer your question, I think it's the change in approach is more trying to get ahead of certain things, anticipating changes, knowing which criteria are more successful than others. And then just the internal communication between the team that we have dedicated to these cases, who are on a daily basis kind of sharing what they're seeing across their cases, and then implementing that in their responses, whether it's getting additional letters of recommendation to further solidify critical role in an RFE. So there's kind of different solutions based on each case in RFE, but I guess that would be my answer.
Awesome, Hendrik. Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely have seen like what's the different attorneys like combine together and get the knowledge on like what exactly the RFE is about, and then answer it. That's something which I've seen. Thanks for the detail, Hendrik. One other common set of questions which I usually see is, let's say like what's go through the process, and there could be like always, not always, like what's sometimes like EB1A could be rejected. What happens in that case? Does it affect the H1B, or does it affect like the EB2 application, EB2 I-140 at all?
Yeah, good question. And the team gets this one sometimes as well. So similar to the prior question about can I have a second I-140, you can have a second, third, fourth I-140. And if you have a denied I-140, it doesn't impact or negate any other I-140 you have. So a lot of people will have their I-140 with their existing employer or prior employer that you'll be able to keep at all times, and leverage that that priority date. And if you attempt any other I-140, you could have an I-140 with company A and then have another I-140. It could be under EB1, 2, 3, any 5. And if you run into an issue there, it doesn't negate anything else that you have. And then in terms of impact on depending on kind of your underlying non-immigrant status, and again, to have a conversation, obviously, with your legal team on this, but and most folks are on an H-1B status, not everybody, but most folks, and H-1B allows for the dual intention to be seeking a green card while you're on an H-1B, and so any move towards that is not supposed to have any impact on your H-1B, and if there's a denial, you could even get more evidence and reapply as well. So it shouldn't be an issue, but for each specific situation, make sure you get some actual legal advice. But that's just at a high level. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah, as Hendrik mentioned that like what so we have actually like went back and refiled for the rejections, and then like what is it, and they're accepted as well. And just want to reiterate like what is it, we're just keeping more like generic information, sharing as much information as we know, but every case could be completely different. Like what is it, anything more related to your case, then probably it's good to have like set up a call, go through your case, and try to get like legal advice. Um, One other common question, what I say, one of the common sets of question which I say, Henrik, is let's say like someone is on TN visa or an E3 visa, and that's like the single intent. And when I personally have seen like what is a many of my friends, like what is a relatives who are on TN visa and came to United States and became green card holders and citizens later. Does it affect them? Like what is it, if they try for EB1A or like even for that case like EB2 or EB3?
Yeah, that's definitely it's obviously not impossible to end up with a green card. So that is possible. Many people go from TN and end up in a green card. It's definitely a more nuanced situation because so there's typically for the EB1A, right, there's an I-140 application, there's an adjustment of status application. Certainly when one gets, and even with the I-140 filing, it's again something to plan out very well from a timing standpoint, and to make sure you get kind of clear advice before you do this and travel if you're in those statuses. But unlike the H-1B, those status types are not dual intent status types, right? So if you evidence your intention to get a green card and become a permanent resident, then you could very well run into issues when whether you're traveling out and coming back into the US, whether you're trying to file an extension of those statuses. So it becomes, and again, you every time you come in one of those statuses, you are essentially stating to the immigration service you're only coming in for the intention to be on that status, and so that can obviously very quickly become very problematic and be seen as that you're trying to do something that you're not supposed to. So that is definitely a more nuanced situation. But there certainly are folks who come in initially on a TN, for example, and then later they decide that they want to stay longer term. And so it's a matter of getting a really clear plan and advice and strategy on that to make sure you don't have any issues or are seen as trying to misrepresent or do anything unlawful.
Makes sense, Hendrik. There are a few sets of questions which I'm actually going to take. One question is like, I have 10 years of experience in the consulting firm. Would I be eligible to apply for EB1A? So in our when we break down like our approvals, we see around like 50% of those approvals are definitely from like top tier companies like FAANG companies, Salesforce, like Twitter, and or well-known brands. And definitely we see like the other 50% are like from startups like Series A, Series B, Series C, and also like well-known consulting companies as well. That's another thing which we see. The most important thing, as we highlighted earlier, is like the impact of the work. As long as the impact of the work is really good, definitely so you can show that impact, and from that you can actually build your profile to meet different criteria. Then you can apply for EB1 as well. The one other question what I see here is okay, so the other question what I say is like EB1A Green Card, is it applicable like when you're in India, when you're in other countries? One thing what we this question has been like a little bit like more common these days. You can be on any visa, you can be in any country per se, and then you can apply for EB1A. We do have like a few clients like in Canada, India, and are trying for EB1A as well. The other question what is coming is like right now, like at least like for Indian born citizens, probably Hendrik, you can take it this question as well. The priority date, right? So the priority date is like February 2022 right now. And what exactly actually impacts a priority date? And like what is it? Do we see that moving forward? Like what is it in the next year or the year after? Do we see like what is it moving forward? And if it moves forward, like at what pace can we expect?
Yeah, the visa bulletin is tricky to predict. I mean, there's so it's it's based on a formula of kind of the number of green cards that are available, and there's kind of a per country allotments, and when a country folks, and it's based on country of birth, where folks when there's just too many applications within it from a particular country in a particular category, then we get these backlogs. So the EB1A is by far EB1A and EB5 are by far the most expedited, and that's based on kind of the number of folks who are filing and who are qualified. So I think this program has become more popular. For a while, national interest waivers were very popular. It still are popular, but there's kind of a lot of those cases filed. I do think EB1A has been, is picking up steam because folks are realizing, because there is more information out there. There are more organizations helping and trying to reduce that barrier. So those filings are going up. But I don't. There's nothing on the horizon where I expect there's going to be like a massive retrogression in that category. But it's very difficult. Very difficult to predict. I don't know if you've had any thoughts and any research you've done, Raghu, but it's always a difficult one to answer because
To be honest, yeah, definitely, Hendrik. Like, my thoughts are the same. It's always a difficult question to answer, especially even in the last 3 years. If you look at like the way like the priority date or like the final action date moved, I remember like it was current like around 3 years ago. Then it moved to 2017, then 2020, then 2022. So it's been like move up and down. And as you mentioned, it's always like depend on the number of like applicants that we have. Because like for every country, there's a country quota of like number of green cards are issued. And definitely if there are like a lot more people are applying, and the date could actually move much slower than what it has actually happened for the last few years. I'm seeing like a few questions on the timelines. Probably I will take that. So at EB1A Experts, like we do have like multiple different plans, and depending on the plan, the timeline could vary. Usually like the elite plan, what we have is like around 6 months, 6 to 7 months is what we have. But more details on that, like what exactly we do and how do we meet the criteria, feel free to set up a call with us. Yamini will share like the link in the chat box that you can use, and any questions about the pricing, how we can do it, what exactly the profile, those questions can be answered like with our business development manager. Okay, so the other question came in, Hendrik, is like, as you mentioned, like critical role is like the most important criteria, and judging like when we have an RFE, we see like certain criteria probably get accepted like more often. And do you have like a list of like what are the top criteria and what are the bottommost criteria? Probably like I think you did touch upon it a little bit. I can take this question, Hendrik, and you can add a little bit more detail. One thing what I see personally is like the toughest criteria of like probably like the 8 criteria what we see is like the salary criterion. And we have done like a lot of research like on the AOS data and also like our clients as well. Usually salary, even though it looks straightforward, like more yes or no, but it is actually not. It's usually the toughest one. And when we and as you know, right, like was in the RFE or nods or denials is where like we know what criteria have been accepted. The analysis shows like judging is the topmost criteria, followed by scholarly articles, critical role, and then awards, and then media. We have been seeing like recently, at least like the last few months, memberships criterion is getting accepted as well. And being a tech professional, like original contributions probably might not be as strong. So that's the reason, like that's a 7th one, and then followed by salary criterion.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right. I think the compensation one is very interesting because it's the most objective of the criteria. So you would think that it's easier to know if it'll be satisfied or not. I mean, there's obviously the language of the rules, then there's generally how the evidence is being looked at by officers, and then you have specific officers who are also either like or don't like certain criteria. So yeah, the compensation one is interesting. Also salary plus bonuses typically in like W-2 format, then some equity RSUs can be included, but it's a little bit unclear like how kind of the just certain officers just have a different take on the compensation one. So I think that's right. I think I think awards and memberships are definitely good to have to add to the overall case, and just to show kind of a breadth of criteria, ideally 5, 6, 7 criteria where there is evidence. We need 3, but then there's this merits kind of final analysis where we really need to show kind of the level, the strength of that evidence, and overall to convince the officer you're proven enough that they can feel confident you're going to be able to contribute at this high level into the future, right? So awards and memberships, those can kind of go back and forth a little bit, I feel like. But yeah, critical, kind of the lead and critical role, even though they challenge that sometimes, to me, that one just really sets the stage for these cases, especially in kind of folks in the tech sector.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Talking about the final merits, Hendrik, one of the question is like, what is the approach should be like for the final merits bucket for success? Like how it needs to be articulated?
Yeah, I mean, so the first step is really just showing you have evidence in at least 3 criteria. This isn't necessarily how I think the officers actually adjudicate the cases, but that you have evidence, sufficient evidence in at least 3 criteria. Then the final merits step is really to is to show kind of the the overall strength of each criteria and of each piece of evidence, to show that you've really separated yourself from others in the particular field, and how you're going to continue applying that in the US. Now, the application in the US, that's typically not something that's challenged very often at all. It's just if you just make it clear you're going to continue kind of working in that field into the future, and you can provide some information there. But that's kind of part. We kind of include that as kind of part of the final merits consideration. But it's really to further emphasize just the level, the level of recognition. And this is kind of where some of the background about the organizations themselves is important as well, whether it's an award or a membership somewhere. So we could really highlight that to show that there's kind of this, there's unquestionable support for what you've done. So it's kind of getting into that, helping to show again that you've really reached kind of the top of your particular field. And I know saying that sometimes that makes people very nervous, but it's just showing that there's enough clear support from objective support from really established organizations and people and entities that can help the officer feel confident in kind of what you have done to date. So essentially, it's maybe 2, 3, 4, 5. It just depends on the case. Kind of page section of the overall application that really hammers that home and reiterates the evidence that was already provided, but goes into more detail on just kind of the level and the level of the or kind of the strength of the evidence, more than just having the evidence.
Makes sense, Hendrik. No, thanks for all the insights. I see some questions is around the travel. So we are applying for like I-140 or I-140 applied or like 45 applied. Are there any travel restrictions like while you're in the EB1A process?
Yeah, so travel, again, not legal advice, because there's so much going on with travel, like outside of EB1 right now, where folks really need to get very clear advice. And I mean, most folks have their H-1B or their underlying status with their employer, and they have legal teams there supporting them. So I guess my first thing is make sure everybody should check in with their legal team before they're planning to travel at all. Just because of a lot of issues and challenges currently, and potential delays and issues in coming back in. So I will set that aside. I'm assuming folks are already doing that. I would say just at kind of a higher level. Again, so when you apply for any green card, so the second stage, the adjustment of status step, whether it's through a family-based case or an EB1A case, you can request a travel permit and a working authorization card. Typically, these are just to be kept kind of as like backup options and not actually utilized unless you kind of lose your H-1B or whatever other status that you're on, and you get those benefits as a pending immigrant. If you have a dual intent status like an H-1B, for example, that is what you're using to travel in and out on, and that's dual intent. You should well, I don't want to give advice. Most people, will travel on that. If you do travel back in on your adjustment of status related travel document, for example, you're coming back in as a pending immigrant on that document and not in H-1B status. So there's kind of a few nuances that the legal team, we always talk people through. But to answer your question, it's really looking at that underlying non-immigrant status. And does that allow you to be clearly pursuing permanent residency? And if it does, then there shouldn't be any additional barriers. Now, everyone's case is different, so this should be something that's planned out. And just again, whenever we go through this, with us, you're on our platform. You have a dedicated attorney and paralegal on your case, and you have direct access to ask them questions through our platform and tickets. And these are exactly the type of questions you want to be asking. But that's at a high level. But please do ask your attorney specifically so you know exactly what you should be doing or not.
Yeah, exactly. Great insights there, Hendrik. I see a few questions more on the type of fields which are preferred for EB1A. Is it like AI? Is it cloud? Or is it like, completely out of like tech? Like the common sets of questions we see. I know it's to be honest, like I'll give you my thought process here, Hendrik. So we go through our cases again and we see like what are the fields, and we see about like 30% or 25 to 30% right now are the AI cases. And although like just remember that like EB1A experts currently is only helping tech professionals. So like all the fields what you see is like under tech. So AI we see around 25 to 30. Cloud computing we see around like 20 to 25. We see data engineering, data analysis. We see like security like fields as well. So these are the common ones which we select more overall. However, like of course, like we do select other fields as well, mobile OS operating systems. But the one other common question which I think like the question here intent was, hey, I'm working for like government, or like I'm working in a field like EV, which is like very important, or I'm working in a field which actually helps like the environment. So is there any specific field that's like one is considered like more important than others?
So there is a national interest waiver category, right? That's it's somewhat similar in some ways, but there's kind of a clear correlation to the type of work and the national impact that's having. So there it's clearly important. I would say for the EB1A cases, anybody in any field can apply. So that's kind of the starting point. Like they list categories, but pretty much anybody can apply. It's really more on if you're working, whether it's related to the government or it's on let's say like cancer research, or it's like AI technology that is going to save a state government however much money. It's really down to the argument of the impact, right? So it's again the lead and critical role criteria. Typically this is proven through letters from folks who you are working with or have worked with. Identify one or two projects in a letter, and then really the key to it is being able to get some objective statement or measurement of the impact. So it comes down to the impact that you're having within that particular field and role. I wouldn't say that there's, especially now, I mean, AI has been kind of in the past on kind of policy memos and things as like this is something that the US really wants to push and give some benefits to. But I would say it's just impact within your field and getting that clearly verified and having some objective measurement of that. So I think that's really much more important than your specific field, honestly.
Exactly. It's all like comes back to the impact. Like the impact is like pretty strong, irrespective of like what are the field you work on. Like so you can actually have a strong case. I see very interesting question, Henrik. Like one question says that like he's on F1 and trying for H1B, but is unable to get like his H1B picked in the lottery. The question from him is like, what should I do? And then like, can I apply for EB1A, EB2, and IW together? I'll give him him or her like what's my thoughts, and then probably can add on to it. One interesting way is like O1, right? So if you do not have H1B, but that's totally okay. Like there is O1, you can prove, you can build your profile and apply for O1. And at the same time, you can either apply for like EB2 and IW or EB1 just to get the priority date. Or I would say like probably EB2 and IW is like a little easier compared to EB1A, where EB2 and IW can be what is it pursued to get the priority date. And when you feel like your profile is like in the right time, then you can apply for EB1A as well. What do you think on that, Hendrik?
Yeah, I think I'll focus in on your comment about the O1. So the O1 is in a lot of ways very similar to the EB1A. It's just the burden of proof is much lower, and which makes sense because it's still a temporary non-immigrant status. You're not getting a permanent residency out of it. But there are, and you don't have to be on O1 obviously to get the EB1. Most people are actually on H1B who get the EB1, but it is a very interesting path to consider because you already have to start thinking about things in the same way and how you can kind of prove your profile on the EB1. It's like a mini EB1A. So I think that's something worth looking at. The one thing I'll caution, and you should have a legal consultation on this, is student F1 is not dual intent like an H1B. Right. And obviously, there's a lot of scrutiny on F1 students currently. But just be very careful that, pursuing a green card application on an F1 can be tricky or problematic. So again, it's a matter of planning these things out, being strategic about it. Maybe it is an O1 initially, working towards an EB1 later.
Right. One last question, which we can go through it, and then we can probably okay, Shweta, that sounds good. So one thing which we see is like we got 100 approvals last week, and how many of these are like what is the rejection percentage and what is the RFE percentage? We got 101 approvals and 8 rejections. So like the approval rate is like well above 90%. And typically we're seeing at least like from January 1st, like we're seeing around like 30% RFE rate. That's one thing. But I think we covered like most of the questions, Hendrik. All I just want to say thank you for your valuable time and answering all the questions. All I just want to say, I know there's like more like what is it, personal questions here written. And if you did not get to all the questions, feel free to set up a call with the team. Our business development team will go through like these things in detail. And also would like to add one thing is like whatever we shared here like is more information purposes only. There's there's a lot more like custom things. If you have those questions, feel free to set up a call with the legal counsel to go a little bit more in detail. Any closing thoughts, Hendrik?
No, I just want to thank you for inviting me, and we certainly love working working in partnership with you all. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out. And it's just it's about you can do it. It's about planning and just getting a strategy in place and working towards it. And it's really just a matter of when. But there's so many extremely talented people that have done so many great things that it's just a matter of figuring out how you're going to get there. So I'll just leave folks with that.
Okay. Awesome, Hendrik. Thanks, Hendrik. Thanks, Shweta. Thanks, Yamini, for organizing this call.
Thank you so much, Raghu and Hendrik, for sharing such powerful insights. And this is for the audience. So, if you're ready to start your EB1A journey, we request you to book your calendar and talk to our experts, so where they can help you fast track your green card process. And for more information, you can follow us on LinkedIn, and also for Boundless LinkedIn. These links are being dropped on the chat box where you can click on those and follow us and to get more information. And we have many informational videos on our YouTube as well. Please subscribe and get to know more about the process of what EB1A experts are handling and how this partnership is growing as well. So thank you one and all, and see you in the next session.